By the end of this video, you're going to be able to look at this regex here and know exactly what this actually means and what it's doing. I'm going to give you a second to see if you can work out what this is actually doing, but all will be revealed at the end of the video. For some reason, everybody hates regex. You know what they say, if you have a problem and you solve it with regex, then you now have two problems. And sure, you can get ChatGPT to explain regex to you, or you can have AI write you all your regex. But in this video, I really want to grab your attention for a few minutes and just explain how regex works, because I promise it's not as complicated as it looks. This is Regex 101 in a very short video. And notice I said Regex 101. Well, that's convenient because in order to explain regex, we're going to be using a really heavily used website called regex101.com. This website is incredible. You can visit it at regex101.com. This is how I learned regex. The way this works is you can put some text in the bottom here, and then you can have a regular expression at the top. And if it matches anything, on the right hand side, it will give you an explanation of why it matches. And this is a really good, handy way of debugging regex, learning regex, and just generally playing around with regex yourself. So let's get started. And the first thing we're going to do is talk about actual just string matching. So in regex, every character between A to Z, capital and lowercase, and the numbers between 0 to 9 is just used literally as is in a regular expression. So this is our text string down the bottom here. If we just had E in our regex, then that's just going to match every E in our test string. Quick note on the flags that come along with regex, because we'll use these. Regex has different flags depending on how you're using it. So for example, in JavaScript, you'd have /E and then GMI are the flags I'm using. I is case insensitive. So if I put a capital E in here now, because I'm using case insensitive, it will still match the other characters. So you can do this with any word. I can put this and it will match the word this because it's just using the letters. If I put 000 at the end there and I put 000 into my regex, then it will match that. So at its base level, regular expressions are just matching strings inside other strings. But the real power of regex comes when you start to look at tokens and other things that you can put inside your regular expressions. So I'm going to break down the rest of this video into a bunch of categories, which are on the screen now. We're going to talk about tokens, which can be used in your regex to match more than one character or a group of characters. Then we're going to be talking about positional characters, which is you can use a regular expression to match like the end of a word. Then we're going to look at groups, and we're going to look at sets of characters. And then lastly, we're going to talk about modifiers, the way you can modify a special control character. So let's start by talking about tokens. As we said, you can match any string by putting the string in your regular expression. There are a bunch of tokens that you can use to match a wildcard type of character. So if I put the period key or the dot inside there, then the dot is being used to match any character. So he.lo is going to match hello because this dot is kind of acting like a wildcard placeholder inside that. I could put h.o and that will match the string hello. That will also match the string who, like that, because it's being used as a wildcard. So this is the first one you need to know. And this is very important if you're using dots in your test string, for example, with domain names. So here's an example where we've got traintocode.com. If I wanted to match traintocode.com, I could actually do it like this by typing in traintocode.com. But notice how Regex 101 has highlighted this dot because that's not actually being used as a literal dot. And this is a bit of a gotcha. A dot here in your regular expression will match any character. So traintocode a.com will also get matched. If you want to use one of these special characters, such as the dot, as a literal dot, then you can prefix it with a backslash, like an escape character. So that is now matching traintocode.com, where the dot is an actual dot. So there we go. So that now won't match traintocode A. There's a few other special tokens in regex. One of them is the end of word character. So the end of word character is \b, and what that basically looks for is the end of a word. So in this example here, you can see I've written the words, I have a pencil and I have a pen. The regular expression pen is only matching this second one because I've said it has to have an end of word character at the end. If I took this away, then you can see it matches pen here, but it also matches pen inside pencil. Now the \b character is very useful because it respects things like punctuation. So if I have a pen and then a dot, that still realizes that that's an end of a word. But if I had another letter in here, then it's not the end of a word. So \b is really, really useful. Another token that is useful is the end of line token. So that's a dollar. A dollar sign basically means this has to appear at the end of the line. So again, it's matching pen because that's at the end of the line. There's also the upwards chevron like this, which means it has to be at the start of a line. So if I had pen at the start of this sentence here, then it would match because I'm using the upward character there. So we've got \b, dot, upward chevron, and $. They are positional tokens. Okay, now we've learned that the dot can match any character. So in this string here, this is a top tip that I learned to tap on my head. If I put t.p, that will match any of these words here because dot is being used as a wildcard. But what if we didn't want it to be any character? What if we wanted to only match an A and an I in here? Well, you can do that in regular expressions with these square brackets like this. Anything inside a square bracket will be like an or in a regular expression. It'll be one character. So we can say, inside here, we can say it can be an O or an A. So open quote, close brackets, OA, close brackets means that this little group will match any O or any A. And again, you can see on the right hand side the explanation for this, match a single character present in the list below. And this is why this website is super helpful for learning regex, because it will literally explain everything that it's highlighted for you here. So this is now matching top and tap, but it's not matching tip. If we were to put I in here as well, then it will match tip. So whenever you see characters inside a little square bracket thing like that in regex, that's saying one of these characters is in this position here. So that's super useful. You can also have groups. So another thing in regex is if I were to put brackets or parentheses around this entire thing, then you can see it's now highlighted them in green. When you run a regular expression, as well as just matching something in a string, you can also match and extract information. So by putting these parentheses around here, it becomes a capture group. And you can see on the right hand side here, I've actually matched these capture groups and I can actually extract. If you were using this in JavaScript, you'd be able to inspect the match object from the regex and you'll be able to pull out these things. So whenever you see parentheses like this, that is creating a group. If you wanted it not to be a capturing group, but you still want it to be a group, then you can put a question mark and a colon, but that's not super common. It's just good to know that if you've got parentheses, then this is being treated like a group, and that's usually when you want to be extracting data out. So you're not just matching, you're actually matching and pulling information out of it as well. Another thing when talking about these all groups here is that you can actually say this is a negative match. So by default, this will match anything that's O, A, or I. If I put the upward chevron at the start of this group, that's now saying anything that isn't O, A, or I. So let's just say we wanted anything that wasn't A or I, then that would then match top, because top doesn't have an A or an I here. And so this is kind of negative version of doing this without the chevron. So that's another thing that you might come across. Now, most people, when you look at regular expressions, you will be thinking, how do I make this so that it can be any number of characters inside here? And there's a couple of ways you can do that. There are two special tokens in regex that take any group or anything at all really, and say this has to match more than once. They are the star and the plus. So let's say we're matching the string hello, but if I wanted it to match this, where I've got O multiple times, I can put a plus after the O. If I put a plus after the O, what the plus will do is the character before it, it will say, I want to match this character 1 and to n times. So at least once. So that's matching the string hello. And you can see on the right hand side there, it says matches the previous token between 1 and unlimited times. If there was no O in this string, then it wouldn't work. Oh, sorry, this string. If there was no O in this string, then it wouldn't work because you still need it to be at least 1 times. If you wanted it to be 0 and unlimited, then that's where the star comes into play. So you'll see star and plus quite a lot in regex. And what they're doing is they're taking the previous token or the previous character in the regex and saying match it either 0 to many or 1 to many times. So this one is now matching hell because this star is saying O can be 0 or many times. And you can use this in conjunction with those little groups we saw as well. So if I put hell and then a bunch of characters in a line, so I might have O, M, P, and then put the star after that, it's now this entire group here that is being matched with a star. So I could write the string hell, that's now fine because this P is being repeated many times and that's in this capture group here. You could also have a combination of some of these, like pop. That's also going to match because again, it's matching anything inside these square brackets between 0 and many times. Another thing to introduce you to is the pipe symbol. So if we're using a capture group, so let's say for example down here, we've got the words maximum and minimum, and we want to match both of these in a kind of clever way. So you can see that both of these start with M, so we can have an M, and then they both end in mum, so we can put a mum there. And let's say we only wanted to match these two words. Well, what you can do is in between M and mum, we can have a group with parentheses, and then we can have a bunch of different match statements inside that group separated by the pipe symbol. So if I said AXI pipe INI, then that'll match both of these because everything inside this capture group is ORed by this OR character here. So this regular expression is saying a string that starts with M and then has either AXI or INI, and then mum will be matched by this expression. So you can see it's matching maximum and minimum. So that's super useful to know. Another thing that is quite useful to know is that you can use the dash symbol inside these kinds of capture groups to say a range. So if I had A to Z there, then that will match any character present in the list A to Z. So you can see on the right hand side here that this is saying match any single character present in the list A to Z. So A matches index 97 and Z is index 122. These are ASCII codes. So basically if I had MAM here, that would be okay. If I had MZ there, that would be okay. If I had M8M, that wouldn't, because 8 isn't in the range A to Z. You can also have A to Z 0 to 9. You might see this quite regularly, which will match any character or any number. Another token you'll see sometimes is the \S. So the \S is a white space token. So you can see as I've typed in \S, it's highlighted all of my spaces. And you can use this token any way you like inside a string. So if I wanted to match there is a, if I wanted to match there is a, I could match it with spaces like this, but let's say that I didn't know how many spaces there were going to be. So there might be like 3 spaces here and there might be a new line there. So if I still wanted to match there is a, even though there's multiple spaces, this by default won't work. You could put a space and then a plus, saying that there has to be at least one space. I could do that for both of these, but that still won't match the new line. So the way to do that is there is a special character in regex for white space. So white space is \S, and then put \S here. And again, this is only going to match one white space character, so I can do \S and then plus, and \S and then plus, and you can see that is now matching this string. So \S and plus is all working together as one little group to say, get me some white space, and it has to be, if you remember, plus means at least once and then to any number of times at the end. Also, when we talk about these plus and the star, so you can have plus for between 1 and many times, star between 0 many times. There's also this special syntax with curly braces like that, where you can put a comma and say that we want this between 1 and 4 times. So this is slightly complicated, but this is basically saying this is a bit like a really, really specific matching here. So this is matching because it is between 1 and 4 times. So if I were to put 5 spaces here, it will stop matching. So that's what this curly bracket is doing at the end here. And now we know about the curly brackets, we know everything we need to be able to decipher this regular expression that I showed you at the start of the video. Now this regular expression, if you hadn't worked it out yet, is for matching email addresses. So as you can see here, it's matching my email address, it's matching name@example.com. So let's just finish this video out by quickly going through this regular expression and deciphering everything inside here based on what we've just learned. So the first thing you'll see is that chevron at the start of the position. That chevron means this has to be a start of a string, which basically means the string has to start with an email address. So if I had a bunch of spaces here, that's not matching this anymore because this isn't actually a valid email address. You can't have spaces at the front of your email address. It has to be at the front of the string. Then we are matching any character from this range here. And this range is saying any letter between A and Z, any capital between A and Z, any number between 0 and 9, and then also a dot, an underscore, a percent, and then a plus and a minus. So this is matching all of these things. These are the things that are allowed in email addresses. So for example, if I had something that wasn't allowed in an email address in here, let's just say I had the this random symbol. If I have that random symbol, that's no longer a valid email address because only these things inside this square bracket are the characters that are allowed in an email address. And you'll notice this got a plus at the end, which means that you can have lots and lots of characters in here because without this plus, it would only match one character. So that would match J, but as soon as you start having more than one character, it wouldn't match. So that's why we're putting a plus at the end of this square bracket group here. Then we've got the @ symbol, which just comes in as a plain text piece of @ symbol. Then we go on to the domain name, and again, the domain name can have A to Z, capital or lowercase, 0 to 9, it can have a dot and it can have a dash. These are the only characters that are valid in a domain name. If my domain name contained this weird little symbol, then again it wouldn't match it. So this is basically saying it's only a domain name if it's got one of these characters. And again, we've got a plus because you can have multiple letters in a domain name. Then we are doing a \dot, which if you remember is escaping the dot. So that's saying there has to be a dot in the domain name. If there was no dot here, it wouldn't match. So it's saying there has to be a dot. And then after the dot, you can have A to Z between 2 and unlimited times. And what this is saying is that you can only have, after the dot character, you can only have letters. So you couldn't have dot and then a number. That's not a valid GTLD. So if I put 1, 2, 3 there, it wouldn't match. So it has to be only letters, and you have to have at least 2 of them. And that's because every GTLD or every T out there has at least 2 letters. So if I just had .f, that's not a valid domain name. So if I say .co, that is valid, and this will match. So this is a fairly basic email address validator. It might not cover absolutely every email address out of there, but this one is one of these things that looks quite scary when you first see it. But hopefully this has helped you break down, and hopefully this visualization in Regex 101 has also helped you break down what's actually going on in here. As you can see, it really is saying start of string, end of string. I forgot to mention this, but that's saying the end of the string. So if I put some more stuff at the end of here, then it wouldn't match. This saying start of string, end of string, a group of any of these allowed characters more than one time, and then the @ symbol, and then a group of any of these allowed characters, then a dot, and then any of these. This is also making sure that we have this exact structure here. So you have to have the @ you have to have the dot. You can't put a dot here and then an @ here, because this structure is saying that you have to have this string, and then an @ and then this string, and then a dot, and then this string. So I hope that's helped. Do head over to regex101.com yourself. This might as well have been sponsored. It's a free website. But head over to that yourself, and next time you use an irregular expression, just take a couple of minutes to put it into Regex 101, look at this explanation down the right-hand side, and just try and learn what all of these regular expressions that you're probably using ChatGPT to generate, just try and learn what they're doing. And honestly, you'll get to the point at one point where you won't even need to use AI, or you won't even need to use tools like that to write regular expressions. You'll just be able to do this yourself, and you'll be able to do things like review code bases that use regular expressions. And that's a very important thing to know, because people do sometimes, perhaps not ideally, but they do sometimes use regular expressions for like data validation and other various security things. If you're reviewing somebody's code and they're doing that, at least sort of know what that regular expression is doing. So if you learn to read all these symbols with the help of Regex 101, if you learn to use read all these symbols, then you'll just get better at reviewing code and you'll get smarter. This video wasn't particularly long, and I hope it's given you a little bit of an insight to how regular expressions actually work.